All right, recording started.
All right, call to order the Beverage Licensing Authority hearing for Wednesday, March 20th, 2024 at 3 p.m.
Thank you. We'll start with instructions for virtual hearing. I'm going to share my screen. The city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversation. This vision supports physical and emotional safety for community members, staff, and board and commission members, as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. More about this vision and the project's community engagement process can be found on our website. The following are examples of rules of decorum found in this Boulder Revised Code and other guidelines that support this vision. These will be upheld during this meeting. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. Obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct the meeting are prohibited. Participants are required to sign up to speak using the name they are commonly known by, and individuals must display their full name before being allowed to speak online. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted online. The Q&A function should only be used for technical questions to staff, and it should not be used for public comments. And next we have approval of Beverage Licensing Authority minutes from the February 21st, 2024 hearing.
Do any board members have any edits? Member Califano, no?
Member Absalom, no. I would make a motion to approve the minutes from the February hearing.
Member Roberts, no. I'll second the motion to approve the minutes from the February hearing.
All in favor say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Absalom, aye.
Member Roberts, aye.
Thank you so much. And I apologize, I skipped over roll call here. So I'll just do a quick roll call really fast. You can just put their vote. But if you'll just speak your presence aloud. Member Absalom.
Member Absalom, present.
Chair Califano.
Chair Califano, present.
Member Roberts.
Member Roberts, present.
Thank you. And then Member Carr will be joining us. He's just going to be a little late. Okay, I'll skip back down now. Now we have approval of Beverage Licensing Authority minutes from October 18th, 2024. There was just a slight modification to the minutes. I can tell you what page that's on. It was in the motion for Chicken on the Hill. So we amended that to reflect what actually happened at the meeting because there was just some type. And that is on page 14 of the packet. And it is that second paragraph there, that little motion.
All right. Is there a motion to approve this amendment to these minutes for October?
Member Absalom will approve the minutes for October's hearing.
Member Califano will second. All in favor say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Absalom, aye.
Member Roberts, aye.
Thank you so much. Next is hearing agenda issues from licensing clerk. There are no issues for today. And I will move on to agenda item 2, which is matters from Boulder Police Department, and I'll hand it over to Officer Beck.
Good afternoon. Just a couple updates. We have done 2 compliance checks. We did one February 26th, one March 7th. We had 16 passes and 4 fails. And then also sprinkled in there, not including those 16, we did some tobacco and some marijuana compliance checks as well. And then also to date, we keep getting IDs rolling in from 2023. So far we have about 1,544 from 2023. And as of today, we have 182 for 2024. I start inspections with the state on Friday. So I'm looking forward to learning about our inspections and look forward to giving you guys some updates next month about what I've come up with.
Great. Thank you, Officer Beck. Is there any questions from the board? Not seeing any. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Officer Rick. Next we have matters from Responsible Association of Retailers, and Mr. Dewey just got in here, so give him a second to get situated. It's all you.
I'm good. I'm good. Good afternoon, everybody. Not much to report on the going on of Boulder. We did start a new system. We always just let people kind of pay as we go. But we're kind of stopped that. And of course, Boulder's like #1. Like we're almost a full membership, so that's awesome. As far as people paying into what we're doing in Boulder. So that's just really good news, because that means I feel it's a reflection of the job I'm doing and we're doing if they keep signing up. So I'm happy about that. And we are revamping some things such as the ID compliance checks. It's just been so hard to keep people hired and wanting to do it. So we're kind of figuring out a new way to do that, but that will be hopefully started in the next quarter. And other than that, I would just say something I would like to add to today, because there is a member who is going to be facing you guys today, which is Hazel's Liquor. And I would just ask the board just to hear me out on this real quick. I've been working with Hazel's since the day after the incident happened. I've
Mr.
been working
Dewey, I would
really,
ask you,
yeah.
I would ask that you hold this testimony till we call the agenda
Oh.
item in order, and you could speak to it then.
Oh, cool. I thought I could do that. So that's cool. Can do that. Say it, I would like to speak that time then. And other than that, things are going really well with the liquor side of things. Oh, we will be hopefully doing a fake ID training coming up here in the next few months as well. So I'll keep you guys abreast of that. But other than that, things are going great. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Dewey from the board? Not seeing any. All right, well, thank you, Mr. Dewey, for all that you do.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have agenda item 4, which is general public comments for future beverage licensing authority hearings. If you're here to give general public comment on something that is not on the agenda, please go ahead and raise your hand. Again, this would be for something that is not on the agenda. Use the raise hand function to let me know. Not seeing any hands. So we will move on here. Next is agenda item 5, Panko Corporation DBA Chicken on the Hill, 1119 13th Street, Boulder, Colorado, 80302. Monthly status report to the BLA. And I see that Mr. Liv is here. While Mr. Liu is being promoted to panelist here, I'll just let the BLA know that Chicken on the Hill is in good standing with sales and occupation taxes.
Awesome, good job, Mr. Liu. Happy to hear that you're in good standing. And are there any questions for Mr. Liu? Member Califano, no?
Member Absalom, no.
Member Roberts, no.
All right, thank you, Mr. Liu. Keep it up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, second here. Okay. Next we have agenda item 6 is show cause hearing concerning an alleged violation and whether the fermented malt beverage and wine retailer off-premise type liquor license held by 7ECO2 LLC and 7-Eleven Inc. DBA 7-Eleven Store 35069C 1091 13th Street, Boulder, Colorado 80302 should be suspended or revoked. If you're here to speak on this matter, please go ahead and raise your hand. I'm going to get everyone in here. While they're getting in, I'll just let the board know that this licensee is also in good standing with sales and occupation tax. And I believe.
Hello, I'm Kevin Coates here. Can you hear me, folks?
Yes. Hi,
Very-
Mr.
Very good. I'm from Dill and Dill. I'm here on behalf of 7-Eleven. We should also have Don Puck. I see him on the video screen here as well. It's a representative from 7-Eleven. We're here for our show cause matter. The agenda item packet does reflect the mitigation packet that we previously filed, and prepared to make any statements when you're ready.
Perfect. I'll just go ahead and swear in really quick if that's okay. So Mr. Buck, if you will go ahead and say your name and spell your name for the record. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you for that. It's Donald Buck, Donald, Donald, last name Buck, Buck.
Thank you. And can you give an address for the record?
1207 East Hopkins Drive, Elizabeth, Colorado, 80107.
Thank you. And if you'll raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the statements you're about to give before the Beverage Licensing Authority are true and correct?
I do.
Thank you. And I will hand it over to the chair.
And Mr. Coates, if we could just get you to record your appearance.
Again, my name's Kevin Coates. My registration number is 25995. I'm the attorney here. I'm for 7-Eleven. I am from Dill.
Great, thank you. And since you're representing as counsel, I'd ask if you'd be willing to waive the reading of the procedures into the record.
Absolutely, and thank you.
Great. And is there any ex parte or ex parte communication or conflict of interest from any of the board members? Member Califano, no.
Member Absalom, no.
Member Roberts, no.
And is there anyone here in the attendees list that wishes to speak to this agenda item? If you could please raise your hand. Not seeing any. All right, Mr. Coates, you may proceed.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. I'll just make a statement here and then certainly turn this over to you folks for any questions you might have of Mr. Buck. But our mitigation packet has been submitted. Within it is included one of our policies and procedures is to scan all identification or scan on every sale an ID for the sale. Apparently, this individual within the parameters of the compliance check, the clerk took an ID out from the drawer. So it was an ID that had been left, and they do hold IDs for about a 30-day process for folks to come back and pick them up if somebody leaves a credit card or an ID or something to that effect, but they do destroy it after the 30-day period because they don't want them hanging around, but they certainly have to keep them somewhere. This employee apparently knew where it was, grabbed it, and instead of following the procedures, which was to deny the sale, he ran that ID and made the sale to the underage compliance check officer. So clearly our violation, our employee, we've admitted that with respect to the stipulation with the prosecutor for the facts in terms of what occurred for the compliance check. And the employee is no longer with us. But if you continue to go through that packet, it does outline policies and procedures associated with identification. I believe that we're in compliance with the training requirements for Boulder. They also have an internal training requirement annual basis for individuals to be retrained. They have a BARS program. They've been doing pretty well with the BARS program over the course of the last year. They didn't have any red cards with the check system for those coming in who appear under the age of 50 and whether or not they're being carded or not. They passed all of those. They post those green cards as you see at the end of the mitigation packet up in the store for the other employees to see it, and they encourage celebration of that. You know, the folks are in compliance and that they're doing what they need to do. But this employee obviously saw our failure and made the sale. They do utilize supervision by the managers of the location to make sure that they're also watching transactions and that employees are utilizing the point of sale system as they're supposed to. And that is to see if they can also monitor and make sure that, you know, folks are not trying to circumvent the system. But the sale occurred, and we're here to obviously take our punishment accordingly, and understand that, again, sales just like this can't happen. But Mr. Buck is well equipped here to talk to you about any additional questions you might have with respect to this particular matter, and I am too.
Thank you. And it's been quite a while since we've had a show cause without a signed stipulation. Mr. Ramirez, can you advise on how to proceed?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I appreciate that the licensees council admitted the liability without going through that process. But as I understand it, you do have a stipulation. And if you turn to page, I think it's 35 in your packet. And assuming that that is correct and you have that there, you should ask the prosecution to move to accept the stipulation after you've had a chance to review it. And then you can vote on that and then proceed.
Okay. So is there any discussion from the board on this signed stipulation? All right. And I would ask Mr. Reynolds if he would be willing to accept the stipulation.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Chris Reynolds with the Boulder City Attorney's Office, prosecution. We did reach a stipulation with 7-Eleven here, and it is on page 35, and I would move the board to accept the signed stipulation as the basis for this show cause hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Is there a motion to accept the stipulation from the board?
Member Absalom motion to accept the stipulation.
Member Roberts will second the motion to accept the stipulation.
All right, we have a motion. All in favor say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Absalom, aye.
Member Roberts, aye.
All right. And Mr. Ramirez, are we able to ask questions of the attorney at this point?
You can certainly ask questions. This would be the opportunity for them to provide you any matters in mitigation or in support of whatever they believe is a reasonable outcome. So you can certainly ask the questions now, what's on your mind, or allow them to proceed and then ask follow-up questions.
Mr. Coates, did you have anything else you wish to present? Oh, you're muted.
I'm not sure how I got to the unmute part, but I'm sorry about that. You pointed out it's been some time. It's been some time for me as well in terms of being here on a violation matter. So my understanding is the procedures were followed with respect to the mitigation packet being timely sent in. The stipulation was done and timely sent in as to facts, and that has always been Boulder's practices is to stipulate just to the facts, but not to the penalty, and that the authority then would decide the penalty. You have the table, as I recall. Do we deviate or go from the table up, down, around? And I certainly remember that process. We are asking that because we have a mitigation packet that's extensive, that you do deviate and give us less days down than what are the standard without mitigation packet numbers. But I did notice in the letter, the licensee letter, and so I guess we followed this to a T. It does say that that the BLA in certain situations may petition the licensee may petition the Beverage Licensing Authority for permission to pay a monetary fine in lieu. Now, again, the process years past where those were almost never granted. But I don't know what the authorities' take on those are at this point. We have followed the terms of the letter. We have brought with us sales figures. Mr. Buck has them. They come to about $687 a day for the preceding 90-day period of overall sales as listed in the letter. So you asked me if I had anything else to offer. I suppose what I'm requesting based upon our mitigation, and certainly we'll answer any additional questions you may have. But what we're asking is for less than the 5-day penalty and the ability to pay a fine in lieu. Certainly understanding that the authority certainly has the discretion to do whatever penalty it feels is appropriate. And as I said, it's been some time since I've been here in front of the authority and had a temperature from the authority is as to how they handle these particular matters for terms of a violation. So we certainly make that request respectively, and trying to follow essentially the language that comes from the letter that went out with the show cause packet.
Thank you. So the way it works is we'll come up with a sentencing, and then at that time you can ask for a fine in lieu and we can discuss as a board.
And I wasn't sure because, you know, we were a little out of order too in terms of the stipulation. So I just wanted to make sure that I was speaking up at the right time. So thank you very much and I appreciate that.
We're all a little rusty here. Are there any questions for Mr. Coates or Mr. Buck? I just have one based on the affidavit. That's really concerning that they had a license that they kept after using a valid license that did not go through, that they took that license that they had and used it. I mean, to me, this is a little speculation, but it sounds intentional. Can you speak to what occurred with that?
I can't speak for the employee who's no longer with the company and what was going through his thoughts and why he did that. But it seems like certainly it's not an intentional act of the licensee, but that employee from the standpoint, because obviously the policies and procedures intend for that to happen in the first place. But the employee did that, and I can't for the life of me give you a reason why. Mr. Buck, I think may be able to add essentially to my comments from that.
Yeah, Kevin, I appreciate that. Board member Califano, we agree with you. There's no reason for an employee to save an ID to use it at a later time. It's our practice to hold on to, as Mr. Coates shared earlier, we hold on to IDs that were left behind and credit cards that were left behind for up to 30 days so that we give the customer a chance to come back and say, hey, I think I left my ID here. Can I get it back? We've not ever encouraged, nor it's against our policy to have anybody use an ID that is not the one for the customer making the purchase. So we're with you 100%. We don't get why an employee would think it would be okay to do that.
I'd just like to add that the employee is kind of representing the licensee in these matters. So I would just say have a lot more discretion in your hiring practices. You got your location is in an area that is notorious for underage drinking, and that's even more call to take a risk and caution. So yeah, that's all I had to add to that. Anything else from the board members?
Yeah, if I may just expound on that real quick, because I was going to actually include Officer Reck in this conversation, because when it comes to when you confiscate an ID or a credit card, isn't it the policy of the city of Boulder to accept those things instead of, I heard during testimony that they get destroyed? Aren't those supposed to be returned to Boulder Police Department once you confiscate anything?
These aren't confiscated. These are ones that, in other words, my understanding is those policies and procedures relate to fake IDs, and confiscation of fake IDs need to then be turned in under a statutory, I believe it's actually a regulation period of time to the department. That's not what we're talking about. This was an ID that was a valid ID that somebody left, and same thing with a credit card, lost card. So they're merely holding on to it for the period of time to allow them to come back, the correct owner of it, and to pick it up. But it was not a confiscated identification card. It was a left card.
Sure, it was left behind, but I know a lot of responsible vendors in town will go ahead and do whatever they can to find the owner of those cards. And then once that period is over, instead of destroying them, returning them to Boulder PD for them to do their diligence to find the owners of those cards. I was just wondering if that was a policy that was in place with this particular license.
Well, if that's what the request of the board is certainly it's a reasonable policy. I'm again unaware of that procedure. Certainly aware of the procedure associated with an ID that's a false ID, that's taken from either a valid ID that's not from the person or it's a fake ID. But if that is the wish of the board, we certainly, I don't think Mr. Buck would have any objection to instead of destroying IDs or credit cards after they're left, to turning them into the police department. Do you have any objection to that, Mr. Buck?
No objection. Not at all.
And I'm not saying there's a specific regulation around that. I'm saying it's a policy. Responsible vendors use that as a policy, in my experience, and getting those things back to BPD once they are confiscated or left behind in your licensed establishment. Not saying that that's a regulation, but maybe a practice to help with responsible policies moving forward was what I was getting at.
And very much appreciate the comment, and I believe Mr. Buck is saying that may be what we should do going forward.
And I did have another question to piggyback off that. How many leftover IDs are you seeing?
I don't have a number. I don't have a lot that are reported to me that are retained. Whenever they are discovered, we hold on to them for about approximately 30 days. We don't want to hold on to them for more than 30 days. And so our expectation is that they are destroyed. But I don't have an estimate on how many are left behind.
It just seems kind of odd. We're not seeing that with other establishments, especially retail.
And if I'm speculating that it didn't happen very, very often at all. But this particular ID sat there and this employee used it.
I think it probably happened a lot. I wish we could get data on how many times that ID was scanned. This is a weird situation. My follow-up question is, what are you going to do? What have you put into place since this incident happened? Where do those cards now go?
Yeah, Mr. Coates, I'll speak to this. I've asked our manager, Jack, to make sure that those are secured in the safe where only he has access to the safe for that 30-day period of time.
That makes sense. I
And
have
correct,
a comment, but it's on something else in the packet, so.
I was just going to say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure you can drop a valid ID in a Dropbox or a mailbox and it gets mailed back to the address on the ID.
You mean in a mailbox?
Correct.
I'm unfamiliar with that.
Does anybody know if that's actually a thing? I've heard it's a thing, so.
Well, I'll just reckon back to what I just said earlier. What I've always been noticed with responsible licensees is that when you confiscate an ID and you try your best to get it back to that person, not confiscate, you find a lost ID. The thing you do is you go to BPD and hand it to them. And then that's their next responsibility to find the owner of it. And then it's out of your licensed establishment. I think that was what the policy about. I've always noticed responsible licensees. And that's why I wanted to ask Officer Rick if she wanted to chime in on that.
Yeah, I would highly recommend that you drop them off or contact an officer if you see one walking up on the hill and turn that stuff over, because we do take the extra time to try to locate the owner. It could be that the owner of the ID had their vehicle trespassed, and that would be a really good way for us to get that back to them and also try to identify maybe who a suspect was if they tried to use it at 7-Eleven or, just something along those lines. No officer's ever going to tell you, I don't want it. You can absolutely drop it off. We're open 24 hours a day.
And may I ask, I assume that, does that apply for which I think is probably more often than the identification, but that would be either a debit card or a credit card. Would the police department take that as well?
Absolutely.
Very good.
Well,
Thank you.
I would take that best practice back to our store and in fact, all of our stores here in Colorado, and ask that all of our managers turn those over as soon as they identify that they've been left behind in the stores to the police department, specifically for Boulder store. It's a great best practice that I wasn't aware of, and I'll make sure that we follow that or introduce that best practice for the store.
In addition, the ID that was scanned was expired. So why was it still sitting there?
Yeah, I can't speak to why it was still sitting there because our expectation is it shouldn't have been there.
And yeah, and if it was expired, why are they selling liquor to an expired ID? Like how, the whole thing is very bizarre.
And does your POS system accept expired IDs? Because
Right.
I will have to check on that, board members. I don't know the answer right now that it does or it doesn't accept expired IDs.
I don't think it does, so I'm not really sure how it happened. I don't know if the guy keyed something in or what he did. I don't know. We just don't know. And the fact matter is that back to the original question of the guy acting intentionally, it sure seems like he did. But from that standpoint, it wasn't what he was trained to do, or it wasn't what the expectation of the store was for him to do. And I think Mr. Califano's original statements of, careful who you hire, I guess. But that's that's something, we're not saying that to shirk responsibility for it. It's our responsibility, 100%. But yeah, we're responsible for that employee and his action.
Mr. Buck, I think you need to do a deep dive into this store. It sounds like practices aren't occurring that should be occurring.
I definitely will.
And along with that, can we look at there's a page in the packet for mitigating factors, I think it's page 39. It says where like the training, and you have about 9, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people listed. I'm assuming those are the employees, and you have 3 that have been TIPS trained, excuse me. And their training date, but then you have their hire date is like out in the future. I'm not saying that like what's going on there. And how can you only have 3 TIPS trained employees? How do those people work all the hours?
So the employees that have not received tips yet are within the time frame that we're allowed to get them trained. We have had them complete we got a computer-based training through our 7-Eleven system. It's called Come of Age. And we expect all our employees to go through that before they are signed up to go to tips, so that we do have some training that's already occurred on the Come of Age acceptance of IDs. And for the employees that are NA, it's NA only because they've not been with us long enough to get through the training within that time frame that was allowed.
But to answer your question as well, I think there's a mistake in there, because it's talking about higher dates of December 16th, 2024. I think that should say 23.
Should say
Right.
They were trained within the 60-day period. Same thing. So that date and the November date, I believe, should say 23. Just that's a mistake in terms of the hire date that's put there. So they're not hired in the future. They were hired, I believe, last year. Is
Right.
that correct, Mr. Buck?
You are correct, yes.
I mean, I figured so, but it looks to me like maybe you guys just threw this together really quickly for this show cause. It's just those things that make me wary about what's going on, just oversighting. That just looks really quickly written down. I know
I took my time to do it. I apologize for the error that I made when I was doing this.
All right, are there any other questions from the board?
So sorry if I can interrupt really quickly. I just want to let everyone know that member Carr has joined us. And then I just want to send a quick reminder to everyone that the Q&A function is only to be used for technical difficulties. It is not to be used for any type of comment. And if you are here to make a comment, again, I'll ask you to raise your hand and we'll swear you in and go through all of that. So please don't use the Q&A for anything besides the technical difficulty.
All right, and so no other questions from the board. Mr. Coates, did you have anything final you wanted to close with?
I don't. And again, I assume you deliberate and then we wait to make additional requests if applicable. Is that the fair statement?
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. No, Mr. Buck, I don't believe we have anything else. Is that correct?
Nothing.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we will close for deliberation. Any comments from the boards? Frankly, I see a lot of aggravating factors here and worrying factors.
I agree.
I'm in full agreement with that statement. Just looking at the aggravating factors versus the mitigating packet that was given to us, I see more aggravation than mitigation here. And certainly when it comes to just not understanding how IDs are dealt with when they're left at a store. When you're operating a licensed establishment in the city of Boulder, all employees should know what happens when a credit card or a license is left, or a passport for that matter, in your establishment, and what to do with that. That's concerning to me. And then also the fact that the actual swipe worked. How did that even work? I mean, there was a mention of someone keying in a code. Is there a code to override that? I don't think there is. So there's a lot of concerning aggravating factors for me here. I'm looking at some of the table values here. I would ask the other board members to kind of weigh in on what they think about aggravating versus mitigating, but one count for this would be 5 days served and 9 days in advance, is what I'm seeing correctly, Chair Califano? That's the base level.
That's
Okay.
correct.
With all this aggravation, I'm prone to kind of go a little bit more than that. I'd like to ask the rest of the board what they think.
100%. And given their location, that's really concerning to me. That area is notorious for, underage drinking, sales to minors. It's a high risk area. And the fact of the matter is that we have Mr. Buck, and no offense to him, but it doesn't sound like he knows what's going on at this store or in control of it, which is kind of scary for him himself being the licensee holder. So these employees are not following law, and
Yeah.
they're putting his license at risk.
And I would guarantee this is not a first time. This is a practice. People probably know they can go there and get sold drinks. That's not, you don't have an expired ID sitting around for however long. It's, yeah. I'm in full agreement.
Yeah, we don't know that, though. There hasn't been any charges against that, so we probably shouldn't do any speculation on that matter. But
Member, did you have any?
Can I ask one question?
we're closed for deliberation at this point. So
Well, the only issue is I'm curious on the
your codes were closed for
where it's coming
deliberation.
from that it's expired. That was the only question, I guess, is I'm having trouble seeing that in the report. I know that's the only thing that I had a question about.
Mr. Coates, we're closed for deliberation, but to answer your question, it is in the affidavit.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, I would agree that we definitely go higher than table value. Are there any suggestions? One suggestion I might have is that we go a little higher than table value, maybe not a little, but higher than table value. And given the aggravating factors, many days held in abeyance.
I think that makes sense given as to the location of the licensee and the proclivity for things like that to happen. So I think to your point, I would say looking at the table value of 5 days serves and 9 days in advance, I would say 5 days serves and move that to 20 days in advance or maybe a month in advance, just because of the risk factor of that location.
I was going to make a suggestion of 8 days served with, I like the 20 held in abeyance. Yeah. It holds them accountable. Any thoughts on that?
I would second the violation for the code of 1 count, move it up to 8 days served and 20 days in advance for this. I would second that motion if that was a motion, Member Calfon.
Yeah, I can make the motion and have you seconded of 8 days served and 20 days held in abeyance. All right.
Member Absalom would second.
All in favor say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Absalom, aye.
Member Carr will abstain because I was not present for the testimony.
Member Roberts, aye.
All right, and Mr. Coates, this is now your time.
Dare I ask?
I'm personally not willing to entertain the idea of a fine in lieu.
I'll second the fact that I am not willing to entertain any thought of a fine in lieu.
Member Roberts?
I agree. Yes, Member Roberts.
May I ask then the question of how is it served and beginning when?
So that was my next point. We have to determine those days. Typically we would start on the following Monday from this hearing, but given the aggravating factors, that spring break, I don't think it would get the point across and the seriousness of their violation. I would make a motion to start the following Monday. Let me get the date. Monday, April 1st. Is there a second?
Member Absalom would second.
All in favor say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Absalom, aye.
Member Roberts, aye.
Member Carr will abstain.
All right. So Caitlin, can we have those materials ready?
Yes, and I just am gonna reiterate so that I know I have the correct information here. So we have 8 days served, 20 days in advance, And the 8 days served will begin on Monday, April 1st, which means a poster will be available. Honestly, I'm gonna make the posters before I leave today, so the posters will be available after today. Just so that we can make sure that we have those, but they will need to be posted by Monday, April 1st.
And you say poster, is it 2 posters? One inside,
will-
one out?
Correct, yes, it will be 2 posters, one inside, one out, and then they will be available for pickup at our locker system, which is can be accessed 24/7.
And they can pick up in the locker system. That's 24/7. That's essentially where they could pick it up.
Correct,
And
yes.
will we be sent the code, or will it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right,
And-
thank you. You'll email that to Mr. Buck and I?
Yes, that's correct. And Roberto has his hand raised, so I'll let him chime in here.
Thank you, Ms. Kellogg. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And just so that the record is abundantly clear, the rules of procedure state, so you're fine with the date, the suspension dates shall be served within 30 days. So you have that, but the record isn't necessarily clear. I just want to make sure that it's clear that the suspension will be on consecutive days and on days when the licensee would otherwise be open for business.
Great. Thank you for that, Mr. Ramirez. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Coates.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just make sure that everyone is where they're supposed to be. Okay, great. Okay. Next we have agenda item 7, which is show cause hearing concerning an alleged violation and whether the retail liquor store type liquor license held at Integrity Retail Partners LLC, DBA Hazel's Beverage World, 1955 28th Street, Boulder, Colorado 80301 should be suspended or revoked. And if you are here to speak on this matter, please go ahead and raise your hand and I'll. And while Mr. Jerking is being promoted to panelist here, I will let you guys know that this licensee is in good standing with sales and occupation tax. And then Mr. Dewey, I see that your hand is raised as well. I'm just gonna lower it, but I will go ahead. I will need to swear you in, so if you'll just turn your camera on for a second. Okay, and then Mr. Jerking, are you the only one that's going to be appearing besides Mr. Dewey for this?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. And you're an attorney, is that correct?
It is. My registration number is 24535, and we're willing to waive reading of the procedures.
Thank you so much. And then Mr. Dewey, I'll just have you, I'm just going to swear you in. I'll have you say your name and spell your name for the record and give an address for the record.
Nathan Dewey, Nathan Dewey, 1813 Cherry Blossom Drive, Windsor, Colorado.
Thank you. If you'll raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the statements you're about to give before the Beverage Licensing Authority are true and correct?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I'll hand it over.
All right. Is there
Can I just go?
or-
Sorry.
So the way it'll work is we'll go ahead and start the proceeding. We'll have Mr. Deer King give his presentation, and then you'll be able to speak at that point.
Cool.
All right. Is there any ex parte communication or conflict of interest from any of the board members? Member Califano, no.
Member Absalom, no.
Member Carr, no.
Member Roberts, no.
All right. And is there anyone here besides Mr. Dewey that wishes to speak to this agenda item? If you could please raise your hand. Not seeing anybody. All right, Mr. Deer King, you may proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Kellogg, are you able to show the security video of the failure? If it's okay with the board, I'd like to show you the security video from the store. It's about 1 minute.
Apologies, Mr. Deer King. As I said, it's been a while. So I'm going to go ahead and get the affidavit if we're willing to accept it.
Absolutely.
Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, Chris Reynolds, again with the Boulder City Attorney's Office prosecution. And our office was able to enter into a stipulation with this licensee, and it is contained in your materials on page 59. And at this time, I would submit it to the board for potential acceptance.
All right. Is there a motion to accept the affidavit? Member Califano would move to accept.
Member Absalom would second.
All in favor, say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Absalom, aye.
Member Carr, aye.
Member Roberts, aye.
All right, now, Mr. Durkin, you may proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Kellogg, if it's okay to show that video, and if it's acceptable to the board, it's about a 1-minute video, and I'll just narrate what's happening.
Yes, that should be fine. Can we get this entered as oh gosh, why can't I think of what it's called?
No worries. So the link to this video is actually in your packet. It's on page 152. So that is the video that Hazel submitted. I did have our IT people put it into a format that was acceptable for the packet. So that's why you see that link there in that way. But I will go ahead and share my screen now and play this for you. Make sure. Okay. Here we go.
Great. So we're looking at the left-hand register there. You can see the person whose face is blurred out is the undercover police operative. So he presents a 6-pack of beer. The cashier, Mr. Simon, asks for his ID. You can probably see that that's a vertical ID, and it's a vertical Colorado ID he gave him. Mr. Simon is trying to scan it. He tries multiple times and it won't scan. He gets a little flustered, which he shouldn't have. He never does his manual check of the ID per his training like he should. But he does pick up his radio and call for his supervisor. Mr. Simon had been with us less than 2 weeks. He was still being trained, although he was far enough along that our staff had determined he was ready to cashier. The woman at the bottom who appears is his supervisor, Ms. Maldonado. You can see she takes the ID for 4 seconds, hands it back to him and says, proceed. That's really all of the video that you need to see, but I can keep explaining beyond that. Mr. Simon goes ahead and proceeds with the illegal sale, never having checked the ID himself, and with the ID not scanning, just based on his supervisor, his boss, coming over and telling him to do the wrong thing. Ms. Kellogg, you probably could stop sharing the screen unless you want to. So when I learned of this, I obviously was incredibly dismayed and shocked. And my question to our staff was, how did this happen? Because we should have had 3 levels of defense to making an illegal sale here. The cashier is supposed to check the ID per their training. The scanner is the technology backstop. It's not supposed to replace their manual scan. And then for a Colorado vertical ID or any circumstance where the cashier is not 100% sure what they're supposed to do, they should call their supervisor. And in my mind, the thought that we would have had a supervisor or manager respond and still fail a sting or fail a compliance check, I would have thought was nearly impossible. So we had to really do some soul searching, and we opened an investigation almost immediately to figure out, okay, why did this go wrong? What went so wrong here? And generally, here's the summary of what we learned. One of the employees, Mr. Simon, was cooperative. One, Ms. Maldonado, was not. So I never really heard her explanation for her behavior. Mr. Simon said he couldn't understand why the ID wouldn't scan. And he shouldn't have, because there was a period of time a few years back for about 9 months where Colorado IDs had a printing defect, and those IDs from that era just do not scan. We know that. It's not an excuse. Some IDs are not capable of being scanned, like passports. And so the scanner is there as a tool, but he shouldn't have gotten flustered by that. Also, he never did his manual check per his training. And when I asked Mr. Simon why, his explanation was, well, it wouldn't scan, and he knew he was calling his supervisor, and he figured she'd just come over and tell him what to do. So we look at that as a potential training failure of him skipping a very important step, and really the most important step. And yet, despite his mistakes, he did something really important that should have prevented an illegal sale, of having his boss come over and tell him what to do. What you saw Ms. Maldonado do there was not even remotely close to what she should have done. Our policy is that when they're responding to a cashier asking for help, the manager or supervisor should go into the cashier station with them, interact with the customer, spend some time saying, what have you got here? What's going on? Okay, you've got a Colorado vertical ID. There's only 3 possibilities, and one of them almost never happens. One possibility is it's someone who just had a birthday, and that happens about 4 or 5 times a week at our store. When people turn 21 in Boulder, they like to come to Hazel's. Their ID is good for 20 days after their birthday, but we always know that's a high-risk sale because a Colorado vertical ID was issued to a minor, which is why it requires additional verification. Neither employee showed the level of recognition that this was a special case that they should have. If the scanner doesn't work, if the ID won't scan, it shows that on the screen. She never took the time to look at the screen or talk to him about what was going on. And when I first saw the video, before I knew the operative's birth date, I thought probably he had a 2002 birth date and this happened in 2023. And maybe she'd only looked at the birth year and done the math and gotten to 21 and never checked the months. But that's not the case. When we talked with the city attorney's office and we learned the truth, the operative's birth year was 2003. So there's no way, even if she only looked at the birth year, that she could have gotten that wrong. So as we looked at, okay, we had all 3 levels fail here. What can we do about it? At the cashier level, we looked at training. And so in the packet, I've specified some of the changes that we made in our training. And now we still have the focus on calling for your supervisor. But what we realized is inadvertently, the focus on that caused Mr. Simon to skip over the important step of him checking the ID himself. So we're really reiterating that it's got to be both. It's not an either or, that we need this redundancy as a way of making sure we don't make mistakes. We're also training our cashiers very strongly on the fact that they have to decide for themselves, and they should never rely on someone else, even their boss, to tell them to proceed with a sale that they haven't determined themselves is a legal sale, and they are all empowered to decline to participate in a sale that they're not comfortable with, even if their boss wants to proceed with it. Every single employee has the ability to decline, and there will be no discipline for anyone in good faith says, hey, I'm not comfortable that this is a legal sale. On the scanning, it troubled me that when it didn't work, we just basically had to skip that step. That's what we had. And so we went to our POS provider and said, is there any way to backstop that? So when we have IDs from this year where there was the printing problem, or when we have IDs that don't scan, how can we have a technology backup? And working with them, we were able to have our software modified so that now if an ID will not scan, there's another barrier and the cashier has to manually input the birth date from the ID. And so the computer can calculate that for them. Again, looking at this case with a junior employee, Mr. Simon, if that would have been in place, I think he would have correctly entered the birth date. We wouldn't have made the sale. So that's an improvement that we've made. And then, most troubling is Ms. Maldonado's behavior, trying to understand why someone who had been with us a couple years, was well paid, in a position of trust and responsibility, would have acted so recklessly. And although she would not cooperate with our investigation, I did learn that she was going through a divorce and had recently moved out of her home. I did not know that at the time, but our store manager did. And he had spoken with her about the importance of still doing your job and leaving personal challenges at the door. And it was his assessment that she could and would still do her job competently. In hindsight, obviously, I think that was wrong. And on this particular day, I believe probably she was so emotionally or mentally checked out that she just completely failed to do her job. So to me, that really suggests, and by the way, I should say she had available paid sick time. She could have had a mental health day and we would have paid her. And had we known she had a compromised state and couldn't do her job, we would have sent her home. But in our training with our management team, we've really focused on observing and being aware of what's going on in people's lives. And if someone's had some significant life event that could cause emotional distress, to be aware that that's a risk factor for us. That someone might, who in the past had been competent and responsible, might just do the wrong thing. And so we focus on that side of our training at the management level. Overall, I just want to say I'm completely dismayed that this happened. I'm embarrassed. As a big store, even though in case you don't know, we're not a chain or anything. This is a family business. My wife and I and some outside investors have this business. It's our only store. But it is a big store. We do a lot of business. We do a lot of transactions, and we should be the best. And for us to have a failure is just absolutely, completely unacceptable. And so we have to come away with this saying we've got to be better and we can't let it happen again. In the package, I did go through and we pretty much check every single box on the mitigating factors. If now is appropriate, I'm happy to go through that if you'd like, or if the board has read them and in the interest of time, you'd like me not to go over them again. That's fine with me as well. But that's generally our assessment of what's happened and what we've done in response.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Deerking. Are there any questions from the board for Mr. Deerking? I think we all saw the robust mitigating factors in the packet, so I think we're good with having those on the record already.
I have a question. Something that I appreciate all of the detail that you just gave us, including her personal life. But I didn't hear anything. I would like for you to comment on maybe being understaffed. Are you fully staffed? I know a lot of retail places are understaffed these days. I've been a retail manager. That's a really hard job. Your store is so big. And generally there's not a lot of, it's just, can you speak on that? What's your staffing situation?
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a good question. And at the time of the failure, I do not believe understaffing was a factor. I do think rapid turnover or frequent turnover of staff is a challenge for us, and it's a risk factor because we're constantly training. And when people are new, their first few weeks on the job is one of the highest risk times. And we know that. I wish we could get people to stay longer. You know, we've increased wages, we provide benefits, we try to make it a good place to work. But it's just been very, very difficult really since the pandemic to not have a lot of turnover in those positions. We have about 55 employees. I mean, if you compare us to chain businesses, I think we're well staffed. We have no self-checkout. We always have at least one supervisor or manager there so the cashier's never on their own. We usually have 3 to 5 supervisor managers in the building. So I would say the turnover is probably a bigger factor than understaffing.
And have you taken some steps to understand why you have a big turnover? Maybe bring in a consultant, do some exit interviews, anything like that?
We do exit interviews. That we haven't brought in a consultant, but what we hear is cashiering is for a lot of people it's a very repetitive job. And we're in a super competitive environment where there are more jobs than there are workers. We only hire over 21. Our starting wage is at least $17 and as much as $19 an hour for a cashier. We have a 401k, we contribute 4%. We have health insurance, we pay 2/3, free life, free EcoPass, free uniforms, employee discount, paid sick time and vacation. I mean, we try to provide a really robust set of wages and benefits. And the reality for us, with Prop 125 and what's happening in grocery stores, we're actually losing money right now. We have not made money this year. We're hoping to turn that, but I don't have the ability to pay a lot more than we are paying. We're really trying to do the best that we can to keep our business going.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, are there any other questions? Not seeing any. Mr. Dewey, at this time, we would allow you to give your presentation.
Can you guys hear me now? All right,
Yeah,
great.
your camera, that would be great.
I don't have control to do that. Oh, there it is. Sorry, there it goes. All right. Sorry about that. No, I just, as Hazel's is an RAR member, as you guys know, sometimes I come to witness to these things. Sometimes I don't, because sometimes things are super negligent and it's obvious. And in this case, I just wanted to stand next to Bruce on this one, in support of just your understanding that he, since day one, invited RAR into his store. And I have to tell you, his operations are some of the finest I've seen in the whole state of Colorado from my members. And I have well over 20, 30 liquor stores, and he has a very large liquor store. So I think everything he said explains everything very well, as to far as his operations are concerned, to the fact so much that we even adopted some of the things Bruce does and have initiated him into other stores. So I just think that says a lot, as to how he operates, his foresight, his looking ahead to try and stop the problems. I mean, he's even got his PO people now to start things, and nobody else does that. That's what I have to say on that level. He's ahead of the game. He's ahead of everybody else. And just like a couple of the bigger members up in Fort Collins who've gotten similar violations, with similar situations, it's just as the RAR director, I just want to express to the BLA that I have full faith in Bruce and his trainings, and I really believe that moving forward, I would shock to see something like this happen again to him in the next 20 years, as I don't think it has happened to him in the past, several, if not exactly that time. The other thing I could say is, just really take into account the human error aspect on this. We had a very similar thing in Fort Collins where someone had experienced a suicide in their life, and then, legitimately went out as sabotage against their employer. I'm not saying this young woman did that. That is not my place or opinion. But I do think that system with the supervisor for the younger gentleman who's brand new is a great system and should be really thought about. Whereas that was somebody who was having a bad day and decided to not do their job fully. And other than that, I did train, or we came together at the Milk Barn, as I mentioned before, with all of the Hazel's crew on a Sunday night. We got together, and I believe I did a 2-hour presentation and really dug into the employees, the importance of ID, especially because it is such a popular store. We do want to let Bruce get business from those 21-year-olds who do come in with verticals that are legitimate verticals and that are legitimately of age. And so I truly feel that all of his people during that presentation were very attentive, and it was even at like 9 o'clock at night, and they were very thorough in their questions. And I hope that I put the fear of God into them, or whoever, so that they can understand, like, it comes down on them as well as Bruce. And I think as a tips trainer, one of the most valuable things I can do is let those people who are supervisors or brand new employees know that their actions cause reactions, not only for themselves, but others. And so when you guys are just considering what to do with Hazel's, just remember that they work closely with RAR. Bruce was with me from the next day. He let me know it happened, and he and I moved forward with an action plan. And this has actually been very helpful for the Boulder community in general, just to make sure liquor stores and restaurants and cafes no longer, or really put this sort of action into place. So I just want to commend Hazel's on what they have done. I think it's unfortunate what happened. I just wanted you guys to know that RAR is behind him, and we've been working hard to make sure that this also does not happen for him again.
Thank you, Mr. Dewey. Appreciate that. All right, are there any questions for Mr. Dewey? Not seeing any. All right, well, before we close for deliberation, Mr. Deerking, is there anything else you'd like to close with?
Yeah, lastly, and tell me if this isn't appropriate, but in terms of the penalty, we are not requesting a fine in lieu. I don't think that would be appropriate, nor do I believe the board would do that. But if you will consider fewer days than the penalty schedule calls for, we would respectfully and humbly ask for that. We will get the message loud and clear. We already have. And in terms of the impact on the store financially and on our employees, if we're not able to have them work, just ask the authority to please consider that and come up with a penalty that you feel is appropriate. I don't know if this is within your power, but if you are able to allow us to serve a closure beginning April 22nd, which is a Monday, it's slightly out of the 30 days. But if you are able to do that, I would be able to provide hours for almost everyone for one day when we're closed, because we have some shelving coming in, and I would be able to put people to work that day if that's an option.
We'll go ahead and request that once we determine the sentencing. And when we decide the days, we can consider that at that point. All right, well, thank you, Mr. Deer King. At this point, we'll close for deliberation. Is there any discussion?
I mean, this is Member Absalom here, and I will just say in terms of the totality of the mitigation here is pretty impressive. Just from being a community member and understanding what Hazel's does just by being there, I know the levels, and I also understand that there's human error components to this. And actually, people who fail compliance checks generally have a manager who fails it, who's been going through something. It's just something we've seen over time. So I can totally sympathize with that. And to that point, I'm looking at a table value of 3 days served with 6 in abeyance. I'd be willing to move that down to 1 day served to keep the 6 in abeyance just there. But I would say 1 day served would be my suggestion to the board, and I'm willing to hear your opinions on that.
Just to further your comments, their mitigating factors packet was very robust, and that's really what did it for me. They don't really have any previous violations. They've been taking this very seriously, changing policy and procedures. So yeah, Member Carr, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I mean, you guys have said it, but I'll just third it, which is that I've never seen quite a mitigating kind of packet like this before. And as someone who's gone to Hazel's before, like I do know I always get ID checked, and I see that they do follow the procedures. So more so than even any other place that I go to in town. So I'm all in favor of Member Absalom's suggestion.
Is that a
Was that an actual motion they made, Member Absalom?
I was going to see if Member Roberts wanted to chime in, but
Yeah.
I would make that a motion for 1 day served with 6 in abeyance.
Member Roberts, did you have any thoughts?
I was just in agreement with you guys, and I'm really impressed that they found another tool. This is what did it for me. Now that they realize they can enter, they have to enter the birthday if a card doesn't scan. That's really great. I'm really impressed that they kept digging and digging until they found a solution that could probably prevent this from happening. And I also think that when we talk about human error, this is more human error than other things. So happy. I'm fine with you guys with that decision.
So Member Carr will second that motion.
All right, all in favor say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Absalom, aye.
Member Carr, aye.
Member Roberts, aye.
All right, now we are going to determine when the sentencing is served. Mr. Deer King has made a suggestion, or a request rather, of April 30th, which is still, it's not within 30 days though, correct?
Just a correction, April 22nd. It's about 33 days.
Mr. Ramirez, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that obviously you guys have discretion in many, many things. However, this is not something that you have discretion in. It reads shall. So suspension dates shall be served by licensee within 30 days of the show cause hearing. So you do lack discretion on that one.
Mr. Deer King?
If I may, then would April 15, 1 week prior, be acceptable?
Is there any discussion from the board?
I'm fine with that date.
I mean, the only reason I think Mr. Deer King's reasoning behind keeping people employed and having time to plan for this, given all the mitigation and all the things that are being placed, the only reason I would suggest that we wouldn't start it next Monday would be because of the packet presented us today. So I would say I am totally okay with April 15th to serve that day. That's Member Absalom. That's a motion.
There a
I'll
second?
second that motion to approve the April 15th date.
All in favor, say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Absalom, aye.
Member Carr, aye.
Member Roberts, aye.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Deer King. We'll have that poster ready for you.
Thank you all very much. And you all are the representatives of our community. I said it in the packet, but I want to say it in the hearing. I want to apologize to our community because we let our community down. And just please know we are going to do our best to be sure it never happens again.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Thank you. And Mr. Jerkin, you're free to leave. I'm gonna take you out of the panel. It's just okay. Next we have agenda item 8, which is hearing pursuant to BLA rules of procedure, section 10-3. And I'm actually gonna hand this one over to the attorneys, and then I'll be back with you when it's my turn.
So before we get into it, I provided some attorney-client communication. Do any of you have any questions? As I indicated, at this point, right, I am your attorney. I do not know what the specific allegations are. I do not know which one of the two or both of the sections of the code provision that the prosecution will be going forward. I don't know how long this is going to take. I don't know if you want to take a break now, but I at least wanted to give you an opportunity to ask me any questions with regards to procedure.
Are there any questions from the board? I think for me personally, it's been years since we've done a show cause, really, especially one of that magnitude for the first agenda, or the first one that we saw. So I was just a little rusty in the procedures, but it's coming back to me slowly. Is there anything from any of the other board members?
I guess my question is, are we going to understand what those code provisions are today?
Yeah, so the prosecution will provide you certain allegations as it
Okay.
relates to this licensee.
Understood.
The prosecution will provide you evidence in it could be testimony, it could be documents, it could be photos. I'm not quite sure what the prosecution has. Then you will deliberate and make findings. And that's why I said, I don't know if you need to take a break. We might want to ask Mr. Reynolds how long he anticipates this process will take.
I'm happy to chime in. My presentation of the evidence should take something like 30 minutes, but I'd imagine the board will have things to discuss after that. So it could be a good point to take a health and comfort break if the board desires.
Do we want to take a 5-minute breather? We're going to keep powering through.
I'm
I mean-
ambivalent, whatever you guys want to do.
I'm good either way.
I'm good too. They just having these from Mr. Ramirez, that actually refreshed my memory. I don't know if some of the newer board members have been on many show causes. I don't think Member Roberts or Member Carr have. So I've been on show causes that have, there's no stipulation of fact and it basically becomes a court hearing, and I'm familiar with it, so I'm good. But if someone wants to take a 5-minute break to go through them, let me know.
I think I'm good to go. If you are, Member Roberts.
Yeah, I'm ready. I've been through them as well.
Well, if the board is ready to proceed, I can call my first witness, or my only witness today. So I would call Officer Leah Reck of the Boulder Police Department. And I'm happy to swear her in unless a board member would like to swear in this witness.
Are we able to get Caitlin to do that?
Sure, I can do it. Officer Reck, if you'll raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the statements you're about to give before the Beverage Licensing Authority are true and correct?
I do.
Thank you so much. And sorry, will you say your name and spell your name? Give an address on the record.
Yep. My name is Officer Leah Reck, Leahrech. And I'm with the City of Boulder Police Department.
Well, good afternoon, Officer Reck. How long have you worked at the Boulder Police Department?
I've worked here for 23 years.
And what duties have you had during your tenure at the Boulder Police Department?
I've worked on Pearl Street Mall for 8 years. I was a school resource officer for 7 years. I've been on patrol the remainder of those years, and now in this alcohol enforcement position.
And is it accurate to state that you are the alcohol enforcement officer for the City of Boulder?
That is correct.
What are some of your duties in that role?
My duties as an alcohol enforcement officer to enforce the rules and regulations of the liquor code, and do some inspections, investigations.
And how long have you been the alcohol enforcement officer?
Since November of 2023.
You mentioned investigations. Is another term for that compliance checks?
Yes, that's accurate.
And what is a compliance check?
A compliance check consists of sending in an underage operative who's under the age of 21 with their valid ID, vertical ID, to ensure that the liquor establishments are complying with the rules and regulations of their liquor license.
And have you had to perform, as part of your duties as the alcohol enforcement officer, compliance checks?
Yes.
And can you tell the board just briefly why do you perform compliance checks?
To reiterate, just to make sure that the liquor establishments are complying with the rules and regulations, as well as the laws surrounding the license and the alcohol related rules.
And moving on, have you ever heard of the business known as Taco Junkie?
Yes.
What is Taco Junkie?
I believe, according to their website, they are a taco and tequila bar.
And is Taco Junkie located in the city of Boulder, state of Colorado?
Yes, it is. It's 1149 13th Street, which is in the city and county of Boulder, state of Colorado.
And do they have a liquor license?
They do.
Do you know what type of license they possess?
They have a hotel restaurant license.
And do you know what license number Taco Junkie has?
It is 03-4578, and that's their city license.
And in the course of your duties since November of last year as the city's alcohol enforcement officer, did Taco Junkie ever come up?
It has several times.
And what sort of a context?
I've been notified by the Watch 3 supervisor on numerous occasions of violations that are occurring there, as well as issues and concerns that they've had with the establishment.
And what are the general nature of the violations that you started hearing about going on at Taco Junkie?
So the ones that I believe that have surfaced to the top are the violations of them refusing to allow officers in to do inspections and like bar checks.
And are you aware of anything that happened on February 16th of this year in the early morning hours involving Taco Junkie?
Absolutely. Our officers were actually called there from a citizen who wanted to report an incident that was occurring there of, this is that one that was they were reporting a lot of underage alcohol being consumed in there. And so our officers went to go inspect that and to check that out.
And so did officers arrive at the location of Taco Junkie on February 16th?
They did.
At what time was that?
That was the time of call that when the original RP called, it was about right after midnight, about 12 minutes after midnight on February 16th.
And what is RP?
Sorry, that's the reporting party or the person who's calling in the complaint.
And when the officers arrived, what did they observe?
So when our officers arrived there, they were, this is going to be the first incident. When they arrived there, they were told that they were not allowed to go in. They had to wait outside until the manager could be contacted inside, and he would come out and talk with the officers, but they were not allowed to come in at that point.
And who was not allowing the officers to enter Taco Junkie?
That would be the door staff.
And is it accurate that employees of Taco Junkie?
That is correct.
And who relayed this information to you?
That was Sergeant Brunn. He's the sergeant for Watch 3, or for the officers who had responded to the call that night.
And why did the officers want to go into Taco Junkie on February 16th at about just after midnight?
They wanted to go in, well, to check for the underagers that had been reported to them, and two, because the bar has been, it's been a bar that has been kind of on the top of our list as for calls for service. They wanted to go in and ensure that the safety of the people who were inside. It's been overcrowded. There's been a few issues there, but mostly to go in and check for the underage drinkers and to make sure that that this situation was safe.
And is it fair to say that they wanted to inspect the premises?
Yes.
And are liquor licensees allowed to bar entry to peace officers who want to perform an inspection of the premises during business hours?
They're required to, per their license.
Required to admit the peace officers?
Yes.
And is that per Colorado Liquor Rule 47-700?
Yes.
And does it concern you that on that day that they were not at least initially allowed in?
Oh, absolutely. I was able to look on their body worn camera, and it looks like they waited outside from the time they got there until they were allowed entry into the bar, into the establishment, was 3 minutes.
And what could happen during those 3 minutes?
If you watch the body worn camera, you can see excessive amounts of people exiting the bar.
And so potential evidence of violations left the bar, and we're not able to be sufficiently inspected by the officers.
Correct.
Was there another incident on February 18th at about 1:45 in the morning at Taco Junkie?
Yes, there was. Do you want me to continue? There was.
Yes, please. Yeah, can you tell the board about that?
Absolutely. So on February 18th, again, we received a call from a community member, a reporting party, indicating that there was some underage alcohol being consumed inside the establishment, as well as the individuals. There were two community members. One had been escorted out, which he felt was unfair. He didn't want to go into too much detail just because he didn't want to technically be considered a victim from what one of the employees inside the establishment did. So our officers, based upon that information, again, went to go do an inspection or a bar check. And at this point, it was 4 minutes from the time they arrived till the time the manager came out to speak with them. However, in this situation, the officers were physically blocked by the door staff, and they would not allow entry, as well as one of the door staff put his hand in front of the officer's, Officer Harper's camera, so he wasn't allowed to, it wouldn't record video.
And just to be clear, the staff you're referring to, again, are staff of Taco Junkie that were not allowing officers to enter on February 18th at about 1:45 in the morning?
That is correct.
And does this cause you concern? Does the February 18th incident cause you concern?
Absolutely.
And can you tell the board again what your concerns are?
Well, if they are not complying and they are not allowing the officers to do their job by getting into the bar to determine if there is underage violations going on there, on several occasions, even after being explained what the rules and the regulations of their liquor license are, and they're still not allowing it to happen. That's a giant cause for concern for me as a liquor officer.
And again, on February 18th, was there a violation of state regulation 47-700 that requires licensees to allow peace officers to perform inspections during normal business hours?
Yes, this time, on February 18th, this is when, or I'm sorry, February 21st is when our commander and 2 sergeants responded up to Taco Junkie and again were denied entry. However, the staff at the door who is employed by Taco Junkie said, stay outside, I'll go get a manager or someone who was in charge.
And so just to back up a little bit, you've testified to an incident on February 16th at about just after midnight where officers were not allowed in for 3 minutes. You testified about an incident on February 18th at about 1:45 in the morning where officers were not allowed in for 4 minutes. And now are you talking about a third incident on, did you say February 21st of this year?
Yes. Yep, February 21st. It was a Wednesday, I believe.
And so can you kind of start from the beginning about February 21st? What happened on that instance?
So that was when our commander wanted to go up, and because of the issues that we were having the previous 2 from the previous weekend and the cause for concern, the commander went up, and as well as 2 sergeants. One of them was the Hill sergeant, to have a conversation with the manager to explain once again what our causes are, what our concerns are, that we're not harassing them, because the allegation was that the police department was harassing the establishment. And so they went up to have that conversation with the manager. However, there was no manager there at the time. It was, I guess, one was the administration. She identifies herself as an administrator, and the other one said that he was the highest employee there, that he would be the one to represent himself as a manager because there was no one else there.
And so on February 21st, was the commander and the Watch 3 sergeant allowed immediate entry into the establishment?
They were never allowed in. The conversation occurred outside.
And who owns Taco Junkie?
I believe, looking at the license, Angela Caravello, I'm not able to pronounce her second name without, but Angela Caravello is a 91% owner, and Michael Caravello is a 9% interest in the LLC, is what I understand.
And on any of these incidents, was a manager or one of the owners ever contacted or present?
On the incident on the 16th and the 18th, Mr. Caravello was there.
And how would you characterize his level of cooperation with law enforcement during those 2 incidents?
I would say there was no cooperation. He was argumentative, accusing. He had, I would say, yeah, he called the officers liars. And when they were trying to explain to him why they needed to get in there, again, he was refusing to let them in. Some of his comments were, you don't have the right to do that. You are not allowed to do that. On multiple occasions, he made those comments.
And he was not present on February 21st, correct?
He was not. The commander gave the individual, which I never did catch his name, a business card and asked him to call him, as well as I had attempted to call Mr. Caravello as well, left him a voicemail, and he never called back.
Did the licensee ever, in any of these incidents, February 16th, 18th, or the 21st, licensee or agent of the licensee, so employee, ever try to put like conditions on officers' entry into the establishment, like how many officers or how long they could be in there?
Yes, that happened on the incident involving when on the February 16th, Officer Diaz and Officer Stasiak were there and they wanted to go in. He said only one officer can go in. First he refused officers to enter. And then when they said, no, we have the right to go, but and he's like, I'm not allowing you in. Then he said, fine, I'll let one officer in. And for officer safety reasons, Officer Diaz explained to him, we need 2 officers in there for officer safety reasons. And he's like, no, you can have 1. Then he finally allowed 2 and he said, you have 2 minutes and I'm following you around. So our officers were like, okay, that's fine. Because they're originally, because of the issues that we've had there, 4 officers responded to this call. Only 2 went in.
And on when you're saying he in the testimony you just gave, he said only 2 officers, he said only 1. Is that Mr. Caravello making
That
all
is,
those stipulations? Okay.
yeah, I apologize.
No, it's okay. In the last year, do you know how many calls for service the police department has had at this address for Taco Junkie?
So the last year, we've had 69 calls for service there. And those calls are directly related with that address. So that doesn't include any calls that, if they were up at 13th and, up further on the hill, if it happened there, it wasn't included in that 69, that number of 69 calls. And that includes all sorts of different calls, harassments, alarms, disturbances. We've had some ID checks. So not all 69 resulted in a report being taken. And then I was able to pull the other data as of the day, March 7th, when we had a compliance check, we've had 11 additional calls there.
And so, Officer Reck, based on the information that you outlined for the board here, the incident on February 16th, 18th, and 21st, did you make any sort of a plan for follow-up work?
Yes, and to back up, I want to make sure that I let you know that the reporting parties or the people that were calling in were saying that the door staff employed by Taco Junkie were allowing underage people in without checking IDs. They were confiscating IDs and willing to sell them back for $40. Or if you handed them 20 with your fake ID, they were allowing you in, which that information we've been getting repeatedly from people in the community. So that is why that information, based upon what was going on included in the officers being refused entry, I felt that it was pretty important that we go ahead and do a compliance check up there to determine if those statements that have been reported to us were accurate.
And thank you for that context, Officer Reck. Can you tell the board about the plan that you said that you made based on the previous incidents and information that you have been given? Can you tell the board about your plan for that follow-up work?
Yes. So what we utilized was we had our 2 underagers. We had a male and a female, and then we had 3 plainclothes officers who are very young officers. And I call them my 21 jump straighters just because they do look like they are college age kids. So I thought that they would fit in really well up there. So we utilized the 3 plainclothes officers and then the 2 underage officers. I wanted 2 plainclothes officers inside the establishment. They entered with their real IDs to get in there and to get some eyes on what was going on inside the establishment. And I kept one of my plainclothes officers outside with my underage operatives just for safety reasons, just based upon what's been going on up there. We weren't sure what would happen. So we wanted to make sure that their safety was our priority. I had a 20-year-old male operative and a 19-year-old female operative. My 20-year-old operative had a fake ID that was so extremely fake. It's obviously fake. And it showed that the operative was 6'4", 250 pounds when he's 5'10", 150. The female operative, the 19-year-old, had no ID. She had nothing. She took a picture of it And so that was our goal, to see if we could get her in, if they were actually allowing underagers in without checking IDs.
And thank you, Officer Reck. Did you have any other plans for your male underage operative with the fake ID to do anything kind of extra?
Yes, we gave him, so we gave them each $40 to $20 bills, and those were marked bills so that we would be able to retrieve those bills. So we gave him the cash to see if he would be able to gain entry with a fake ID utilizing cash.
And so is it accurate to say that the plan was to see if the male underage operative could basically slip the bouncer a 20 with the obviously fake ID and to see if that was in fact happening up at Taco Junkie?
Yes, and he had strict instructions that he wasn't allowed to bring it up. If it was brought up by the door staff, then he could offer the $20. However, our underage operative was not allowed to say, will you let me in with 20 bucks?
And Officer Reck, you've outlined kind of the plan. Was this plan ever executed?
Yes, it was. On March 7th at 10 o'clock at night, we went ahead and did the compliance check utilizing like I said, my 21 Jump Street plainclothes officers, as well as the 2 underage operatives. And I guess I could say that they failed the compliance.
And is this a normal amount of resources to expend on a compliance check?
No, absolutely not.
And what made you come up with this plan and involve patrol officers and additional security? What kind of was your thought process there?
Well, I was a little bit concerned about what has been going on inside the establishment based upon the information that we've received from community members. And I didn't go into every single thing that we've been told has been going on in there. And so therefore, when I sent those underagers in, I wanted to make sure that we had security for them if something were to happen. I also wanted my plainclothes officers to get a good idea of what was going on, if they could get a count. We've had so many complaints that the place is usually crowded shoulder to shoulder. And so I wanted them to go in and look for violations ahead of time, and also just kind of keep an eye and monitor what they were witnessing.
So March 7th, this year at about 10 p.m., can you walk the board through what happens?
So we go ahead. My 2 plainclothes officers get inside with their valid IDs. They go in, they purchase a drink, they sit down, they're watching, just keeping their eye on everything that's going on. While they're inside, they're able to see many underage individuals, females, who've told them, oh yeah, we're underage. It was a mom-daughter weekend there. And so there was a lot of underage, they admitted, again, they didn't know that these were officers, but they admitted that they were, 19, 20 years old, and they were there with their moms. So we're having them watch. I sent in my male operative first because I wanted to keep the other plainclothes officer outside to keep their eye on him while he was trying to, while he utilized his fake ID to get into the establishment. As he approaches, he shows his ID to the door staff who were employed by Taco Junkie. And they looked at the ID and they said, that's obviously a fake ID. However, if you give me 20 bucks, I'll let you in. So he gave him $20. He gave him one of the marked $20 bills, and he entered inside the establishment, went back to the bar area where he purchased himself a Corona beer. He was not ID'd at the bar, and there was no one else in there who checked his ID. He walked over to where our plainclothes officers were, and he set the beer down. And after that happened, the next 2, we had our underage 20-year-old female. She said she's with one of our plainclothes officers, and she said, I don't have an ID. My car was broke into. My ID was stolen. He said, do you have the app on your phone, the Colorado app? And she said, no, but I do have a picture of my ID. And he said, yeah, just pretend that you're showing it to me. Show me your phone, show me something, and I'll let you in, because the manager's inside. So as she's getting her phone out to show him the vertical picture of her ID, he didn't even look at it. He just let her in. So she went in along with the other, our plainclothes operative, who was one of my 21 Jump Streeters. They walked straight back to the bar where they are, she orders her alcoholic beverage. She is served the beverage. The plainclothes officer tasted it to confirm that there was alcohol in the beverage, just because she's not allowed to check it. She carried it over, set it on the table where the plainclothes officers were sitting, and then the two underagers were directed that they needed to come out at that time. I did not want them inside anymore for safety reasons.
And you mentioned that the male underage operative was able to purchase an alcoholic beverage inside the bar without having his ID checked. The female underage operative, you said that she was able to purchase an alcoholic beverage. Do you know if her ID was checked at the bar?
Her ID was not checked at the bar. And also to note, the cash that those two used was put into a tip jar, not put into the cash register. And we were able to find that when Officer Gignac and I went in and we asked to get the marked bills back. They were in the tip container.
And Officer Rec, the undercover plainclothes officers, the 21 Jump Street, were they able to observe any other sorts of violations while they were in the bar?
When they walked in, they immediately noticed and detected an odor of marijuana. They could see a haze in the air. They could see that people were smoking up towards the front, and there was no direction from any staff for them to stop to go outside. One of my underagers also had a vape, and he lit the vape up just to see if anybody would come contact him to tell him no smoking inside, and no one made the effort to stop any of that smoking of vapes, marijuana, any of that.
And do you know what the occupancy is of Taco Junkie?
Yes, I reached out to Dave Lowry, the City of Boulder Fire Department. He's our marshal, our fire marshal, and it's 32. And that was also documented in one of the officers' reports that they did see that the occupancy sign is posted and it says 32. However, when they were inside, when they first entered, they counted 40, but they said people were still coming in at that point.
And so once the underage operatives were told to leave the bar, what happened next?
Once that happened and the operatives were out and they were safe, Officer Gignac and I, who we have a kind of a plainclothes police officer, we had our vests on that identified us as police officers. We went up to the door, met with the door staff, again, employed by Taco Junkie. And at first they weren't going to let us in. And then Sergeant Marquez, he was in a uniform. As well as Officer Eric Stevens were in uniform. He stepped around, he said, "Are you refusing us entry?" And the door guy said, "Nope, come on in." So at that point, Officer Gignac and I were able to get in, and Sergeant Marquez and Officer Stevens were pretty much our cover while we were handling the violation.
And did you write any tickets that night?
Yes, we ended up issuing 2 tickets to the bartenders. There were 2 separate bartenders that were identified by the operatives that served them alcohol, and their identity was confirmed by the underage operatives, who they were, the description, I should say. So they were each issued a ticket for the sold, gave, procured alcohol to a minor. The other part of it is I went outside right away to deal with the door staff who collected the $20 from my underage operative. And he at first denied any knowledge of collecting $20. But when I told him that, there could be some charges that are accrued with that, then he got the $20, handed it to me. And sure enough, it was one of the $20 that had been marked.
And did you learn from any of the bartenders that night about who they rely on to do ID checks?
We were told, Officer Gignac spoke with one of the bartenders, and he said that they rely on the door staff to ensure that the people that they're letting in there are 21 or over 21 years old, 21 and over.
Was it your impression that anybody at Taco Junkie, based on your reviewing of reports and what happened on March 7th and what happened 3 times in February, that anybody at Taco Junkie takes enforcement of underage alcohol laws seriously?
I did not get that anybody there takes anything serious like that.
And did your plainclothes officers feel like, based on what they saw, that there was any attempt by staff to enforce underage drinking laws?
There was no attempt made by anyone inside to check for IDs or do that. I did read in one of the reports that after the officers came in, some of the staff was escorting people out of the establishment, pushing them out. They said they appeared to be underage, however, that wasn't confirmed, but once officers made entry into the building on the 7th, people were being told to leave.
And Officer Reck, do you have concerns about the conduct of Taco Junkie as an establishment with a liquor license based on what you've testified to here today?
I do.
What are those concerns?
I have a lot of concerns, and I think that is felt by a lot of my department, my supervisors, command staff, the other officers, that there is a lot of violations that are going on there repeatedly, and it's happening even after they've been talked to and explained what the rules are, and it's continuing, and they're just not understanding the severity of what it is that they're doing. And so I'm very concerned.
And do you believe that the violations of the law that you've testified here to today regarding Taco Junkie are deliberate and willful?
I do.
And what makes you say that?
Because they've been told, they've been explained what the rules are, and they continue to violate those rules.
And do you believe that the bouncers at Taco Junkie on March 7th just made mistakes in terms of misreading IDs and letting people in who were underage?
No, it's been witnessed time and time again that they've been just allowing people in. As one of our plainclothes officers witnessed it that night, that people were saying, I forgot my ID. They're like, just come on in. So it was witnessed the night of the 7th.
And do you believe the conduct of Taco Junkie presents dangers to the public health, safety, or welfare that requires swift action?
I do. I believe that we need to do something sooner than later before somebody in our community or somebody within the establishment gets hurt from the violations that are occurring there. I truly believe that.
And in addition to it being a violation of state regulation 47-700 that is liquor licensees must allow for inspections, is it also a violation of the Boulder Revised Code to fail to permit inspections?
Yes, it is. And I did educate my officers of that. It's 554. It's Boulder Municipal Code 554, refusal to permit inspections. And I have asked my officers to start issuing tickets if that does occur.
And is there anything else that you want the board to know about your work regarding Taco Junkie, either from March 7th or any of the incidents in February?
I do. I want them to know that I did actually speak with Mr. Caravello on last Thursday. So I'm having to look at what that would have been on the 14th. And I explained to him, we had a conversation. He was very argumentative with me. He didn't want to hear a whole lot of what I had to say, but I did explain to him, why we did the compliance check. He told me that he was going to work on improving things. However, over the weekend, we saw that didn't hold true.
At this time, I don't have any other questions for you, Officer Reck. I do believe that perhaps the board members might have some questions for you. And just for the board's awareness, Officer Rec's our only witness, and after the board's asked any questions of Officer Rec that they might have, I would respectfully request the opportunity to give a kind of a closing argument on what the prosecution arm of the city attorney's office thinks the board should do.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds, and thank you, Officer Rect. I have a quick question. What was the reaction? Well, first of all, I don't know if you can speak to this, so I apologize if this is an inappropriate question. Are with those violations that you cited the bartenders, do they have a show cause upcoming?
They will. I have not submitted it yet. I wanted to wait until after today's hearing to get that submitted, but they will have a show cause in addition to what's happening today.
Thank you. And then what was the reaction when you kind of spoke to it a little bit, but was there any from the, and this is pure speculation, so I can't say this is, it sounds like the bouncers are hired security. But was there any reaction when you asked for the $20 bill back besides what you described?
The reaction from the door staff, well, he's a CU student, so he was scared. And he's really afraid. His lawyer has reached out to me. We are in the process of issuing a ticket to him for that violation. Additionally, the gal who is the administrator, her name is Tanner Venrick, I think. She did tell me that she fired that door staff while we were standing there.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions for Officer Rec from the board members?
I have a. Go ahead, Leah.
I'm not sure if this even necessarily matters. I was just kind of trying to get the whole big picture. You comment, obviously, they were not checking IDs at the bar. Did you see or observe like over serving and over consumption as well? Did you guys happen to take note of that, or? I don't know.
I'm glad you mentioned that. One of our 21 Jump Streeters, our plainclothes officers, used to be a bartender, and she made note in her report of the alcohol amounts that were being served in each drink. And I can't speak to that. I don't know the ounces. I should know that, but she did mention that it looked like the drinks that were being poured that night were very strong, and she did note that in her report.
Okay, thank you.
My question was around, I believe if I did my math is correct, it was around 80 calls for service in total, 69 prior to this event and 11 since then, right? So how many of those resulted in reports?
I can get that information from you. I had our Dr. Reinhardt, he does our data analyst, and he pulled a Excel spreadsheet for me. So I just did a quick number of how many calls for service. I can get you that information. It would take me just a little bit to get those numbers for you, but I can sure do that.
Okay, I am curious what kind of situations happen there. That's important.
I can tell you that those calls range from disturbances, alcohol violations, alarms, ID disputes, assaults. We've had some people call in saying that there's drugs inside there. So there's a lot of calls, and some of them were from Taco Junkie asking for police to come help when there's been like fights outside and stuff.
And one other question was the final, I guess, comment here was you or someone on the police force observed them this past weekend and said they had not made any changes. Could you speak to a little bit more about what happened this past weekend? Were there any other violations noted? So one of the individuals, there was a gal outside the establishment who was arrested for a DUI. She was contacted and she was sitting in her car with her car door open, vomiting. And she said she had just left Taco Junkie. So that was one of the calls. And then there was another report. However, I haven't had time to investigate this. It will take some time, of a 17-year-old who was posting on
Snapchat a picture of herself inside Taco Junkie with a margarita. So that might take a little bit of time. We may have to have the detectives help me and try to get a search warrant for her Snapchat account and see if we can find that ID. And if that's the case, then we'll be able to pull a case report from that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Officer Recht?
I would just want to just reiterate what the line of questioning for Mr. Reynolds, just to be clear, Officer Recht, you do identify that this in the BLA rules, subsection 10.3.2, allow us to suspend a license based on a threat to public health. I just want to just confirm that you are saying that this, in your opinion, this licensee poses a threat to the public health.
I absolutely do. And this
Yeah.
has been confirmed by my coworkers, my supervisors. We are all
Yeah.
concerned.
I just wanted to reiterate, have you reiterate that to the board so we can kind of see what action we can take based on our rules. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you for that.
All right, any other questions? Not seeing any. Mr. Reynolds, if you could give your closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Member Califano. Give me $20 and I'll let you in. Pretend like you're showing me something on your phone and I will let you in. Members of the board, you've heard today from Boulder Police Officer Leah Reck, who's our alcohol enforcement officer and has well over 20 years of experience as a Boulder police officer regarding what is currently happening up on the hill at Taco Junkie. And it is not a pretty picture. Our community is placed at risk when liquor establishments make mistakes and do not follow the law. A mistake is when a clerk misreads an ID and sells alcohol to somebody who's underage. Now, what Officer Reck testified to today was not a single mistake. What she testified to were deliberate and willful violations of the law committed by the licensee Taco Junkie. When a liquor establishment commits deliberate and willful violations of the law, our community is placed at extreme risk. Overservice, DUIs, crashes, assaults, and potentially serious injuries and death are the logical and inevitable result if this behavior is allowed to continue. We must hold licensees accountable for this type of behavior that's been testified to today for the safety and welfare of the community. Because the city has shown that Taco Junkie and its staff were deliberately and willfully violating the law, you now have the opportunity to demonstrate that those actions have consequences. Officer Reck testified to at least 4 violations of the law implicating Taco Junkie's license. Boulder Revised Code Section 573, selling to minors prohibited. 2 documented ticketed violations involving underage operatives, but likely very many more. Boulder Revised Code 556, compounding. Now that's a violation where somebody receives a monetary benefit for not reporting a violation of the law. So when the bouncer takes that $20 bill, implicit in that is him saying, just slip me a 20 and we'll be good. Boulder Revised Code 554, refusal to permit inspections. And this one is very, very concerning because we can't enforce the law if we can't investigate it. And per the terms of the liquor license and the Boulder Revised Code, licensees must allow peace officers to conduct inspections during normal operating hours. And that happened 3 times in which officers were not allowed in, twice for a period of time. And then on March 21st, they were just not allowed in at all. These are the legal bases by which you can find reasonable grounds to believe that Taco Junkie's been guilty of deliberate and willful violations of the law and suspend its license for 15 days per the BLA Rules of Procedure 10-3-1. You should be alarmed at the conduct of Taco Junkie. What's been presented here is also grounds to find that the public health, safety, and welfare imperatively requires the emergency action of suspending Taco Junkie's license for 15 days as per 10-3-2 of the BLA Rules of Procedure. You have two extremely solid grounds to find that the full extent of the potential consequence, 15 days, can be summarily imposed based on these violations. Our community is made immediately less safe, and the health and welfare of everyone who patronizes or comes into contact with anyone who's been to Taco Junkie, that is implicated if this behavior is allowed to continue. Based on reports from Officer Rec's law enforcement colleagues and members of our community, Officer Rec organized, planned, and executed the March 7th compliance check. And those reports were found to be accurate, that is actually what was happening at the Taco Junkie. They didn't need to try multiple times. On their very first try, they were able to prove that the bouncers were accepting payment in return for giving fake IDs back that were obviously fake. Give me a $20 bill, I'll let you in. Just pretend like you're showing me something on your phone and I'll let you in. All of these violations have the backdrop of the manager, Michael Caravello, who on multiple occasions stalled and hindered law enforcement from conducting bar checks, which he had no legal right to do. In fact, he had the legal obligation to allow those to happen. But he chose to be argumentative and defiant and try to say only one officer at a time, only 2 minutes. That is completely ridiculous. This is the person who's in charge of Taco Junkie at the moment. Consider his interactions with law enforcement, his violations of the law and refusing to allow the compliance checks in your deliberations, and considering what consequence, if any, to impose here. I submit that these facts demonstrate the need for Taco Junkie's license to be summarily suspended for the full 15 days per BLA Rules of Procedure 10-3. Management at Taco Junkie cannot be trusted to fix these issues on their own. In conclusion, the city's presented more than enough evidence to meet the standards in 10-3-1 and 10-3-2 for the board to move that Taco Junkie's license shall be suspended for the full 15 days. This needs to happen due to the deliberateness, the seriousness of the violations, and the threat to health, safety, and welfare of the community. These actions cannot be tolerated and must have swift consequences. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. This point will close for deliberation in this case. My personal opinion is it's pretty clear. This is a serious community risk. The biggest ones for me was the overcapacity and the DUI that they issued just outside, who had said that they had been consuming alcohol at the establishment prior. This is deeply concerning. Yeah, what are other opinions from the board?
This is Member Absalom, and I'll just say, according to our rules, the preponderance of evidence is so clear. I mean, among those concerning things that Member Califano talks about, just the idea of bribing someone to get into a place, it's just, and not allowing peace officers to come in and inspect the place. I mean, there is no question in my mind there's a preponderance of evidence to suspend Taco Junkie's license beginning today for the full 15 days. And my suggestion would be, I would like to see a special hearing as soon as possible so we can get all the full facts in front of us and have them before us to explain what's going on over there. But my suggestion would be, I think we take BLA rule 10-3-2 and go ahead and say they are suspended from now for the full 15 days, and let's set a date to see them as soon as possible.
I would concur with that, and it's pure arrogance for the law, which is incredibly disturbing.
Yeah. It's so dangerous for the police officers. It's just outrageous. Is that 15 days total or 15 days per violation?
I think it's 15 days that we can, with that specific rule for this special hearing. And then once we get them in front of us, that will be a full-on show cause hearing, I believe is the rules. Maybe Mr. Ramirez can speak to that.
Correct. So you'll be voting on both because as I understand the allegations, it's one, the violations of law, and two, the concerns about safety and welfare and health to the community. So even if you find both of those, it's only for the 15 days, and it would be so that the police officers can finish their investigation. We give the licensee notice, and then have the show cause hearing in a special meeting.
Yeah, I would agree. Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. I would agree. I mean, I see it's very, very clear that they violated the law willfully, and then it is also definitely an affront to public health and safety. So I would make a motion to suspend the license for 15 days starting today, and have a special meeting as soon as reasonably possible.
I'll second that motion to suspend the license for 15 days immediately and get a show cause hearing quickly.
I have a quick question on the suspension. Can it start today or does it need to start tomorrow?
Tomorrow. Or
Or tomorrow.
That is not clear, except that we would have to actually prepare the order and provide it to them.
How quickly can that?
I can work on it tonight after the hearing, send it both. Well, I can send to Kristen Teague for review. But before the board votes on that motion, you first have to find, or you have to vote on whether or not you find by preponderance of the evidence that there's been a violation of the law, and then separately the health, safety, and wellness or welfare to the community. If you find either one of those two or both, then you can make a motion for the 15 days.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. I would make the motion that for the public or the community safety violation, that they have violated it. Is there a second?
Member Absalom would second.
All in favor say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Absalom, aye.
Member Carr, aye.
Member Roberts, aye.
All right, now we have the second violation. Is there a motion?
Member Carr will make a motion to vote that they have violated section 10-3-2, public health, safety, and welfare. Is there a second?
Member Absalom would second.
All in favor say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Absalom, aye.
Member Carr, aye.
Member Roberts, aye.
All right, violation is passed. Now, is there a motion?
Actually, you guys voted on the health, safety, and welfare committee twice.
Right, right. Okay,
Correct.
that's
Yeah.
what I thought. That was-
So member Absalom make a motion that the licensee broke Colorado law. Is there a second?
Member Carr will second.
All in favor say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Absalom, aye.
Member Carr, aye.
Member Roberts, aye.
Violation has been passed. Is there a motion for the suspension of the 15 days?
Member Absalom make a motion, depending on how fast city staff can get the paperwork together for the order, as soon as possible, that the license be suspended as soon as city staff can provide the notification for the full 15 days. And I would make a motion to have the special hearing a week from today on the 27th. As long as that's enough time for BPD and the staff to get everything together for the special hearing. It's really up to whatever city staff can do for that, I guess.
I think it has to be the posting.
10 days. So I think the rules, and Kristen Teague, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it does require 10 days for a special meeting.
That is correct, and we are required to, and that's because of the public posting requirements, in addition to a few others.
So Kristen, how quickly could it be posted to start that 10-day window?
Based on research that Ms. Kellogg did, I believe we can get that in the paper. We can submit tomorrow for publication on which date, Caitlin?
The 24th, so Sunday. Sunday is the first day that I could get a publication into the paper.
Right, because that's when when the Daily Camera posts their legal notices.
Yeah, so based on that, the eligible dates for hearing would be April 3rd, 4th, or 5th to keep it within the 15 days and after the 10 days.
Member Califano could do the 4th.
I thought she said the 3rd. Oh, you can do the 4th. I'm sorry.
The 4th was a Thursday, right?
It's a
Yeah,
It's a Thursday. Yep.
I can
Thursday.
do the 3rd. Can you do Wednesday?
I can do the 3rd. Sorry, I had the wrong month pulled up in my calendar.
I could also do the 3rd.
Member Absalom is good for the 3rd as well, at 3 p.m.
In anticipation that this could be a longer than normal special hearing, do we want to change that time?
I'll make myself free for that day. I think Member Califano is making a valid point. If any other of the board members can start earlier, that might be advantageous to our timeline. I could make a motion for 1 o'clock.
I will probably not be able to do 1 o'clock. I think the earliest I could do would be 2 on that day.
2 would work.
Better for me too. 1's a little early.
All right. So, Member Absalom, what was your motion again?
My motion would be to summarily suspend the license beginning as soon as the city staff can get it ready for the 15 days. And I motion to hold a special hearing of the BLA, a show cause special hearing of the BLA on Wednesday, April 3rd at 2 p.m. for Taco Chunky.
Member Califano would second that. All in favor, say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Absalom, aye.
Member Carr, aye.
Member Roberts, aye.
And Kristen and Caitlin and Mr. Ramirez, how I know that puts a lot of pressure on you all. Is it more than likely to happen tomorrow, or would it actually happen tonight? Because I do have concerns with this establishment, even, staying open for another evening or serving alcohol for another evening. Excuse me.
Kristen, who signs off on the order? You do?
Yep, that would be me.
What does your evening look like?
I am wide open for the
Okay.
purpose of city business.
So for the health and safety of the community, I'm more than willing to, as soon as we're done, start working on that order. Kristen, do you happen to have a copy of the last one that was issued?
For a summary suspension, I do not. We're going to have to create from scratch.
That's fine. That's fine. Can you send me, I know that I sent orders from the last hearing. Those weren't summary, obviously, but just so that I can have the final product to go by.
Sure. Yeah, we can just forward you the email that had all of those.
And then the other piece is probably for Officer Rec. Do you
Sorry.
have the no, not a problem. Do you have the bandwidth to if Kristen and I can knock this out this evening, to have somebody on your staff to go and post?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll get it done.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all three of your dedication to this.
Seriously, thank you for doing this so expeditiously.
I do have an additional question. I guess during this period of suspension, how do we ensure that it's that they aren't serving alcohol? And is there any enforcement mechanism or any next step if officers observe alcohol being served during this enforcement period or the suspension period?
Because this would begin immediately upon posting, correct?
Correct. Officer Rec, do you have any plans on follow-up to see that it is in fact?
Yeah, I can make sure that our officers do some checks up there. Additionally, I would like some guidance on what should we do should they violate and continue serving, just because our hands are somewhat tied in that situation.
I guess what are I kind of posed, yeah, Mr. Reynolds, do you have a suggestion?
I do, and I would give that to Officer Rec, probably outside of the context of this meeting.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right. Is there anything else we need to do with this? Great. Next agenda item.
Caitlin, before we move on, I think I already mentioned this to you, but I do have to leave a little bit early here, and I figure I will just take this as a moment because we're between agenda items. So I do need to get out of here, but I will follow up and I will follow everything after it's all in the record, and I'll see you guys. It sounds like sooner than later.
Go to your fancy dinner.
Thanks, Member Epsilon. Okay, next we have agenda item 9, matters around Deputy City Attorney. Roberto, do you have anything?
I have nothing. Thank you.
No problem. Next we have agenda item 10, which is matters from licensing clerk. We do have 2 boundary settings for you today. The first one is for OG Ferries LLC, DBA Walnut Cafe, for a new hotel restaurant type liquor license at 3073 Walnut Street, Boulder, Colorado 80301. For this one, there wasn't any great suggested boundaries, so I'll share my screen and you guys can choose your own adventure. I guess this location here, zooming out would be more helpful.
Yeah, if you could zoom out just a little more.
Yeah. And you said there were no suggested boundaries?
No, there wasn't anything that was close that would be a good, that was close enough, I guess. To this location.
I'd suggest, at least for the south, Arapahoe. And then for the north, Valmont. And then for the east, maybe 55th. And the west, could you go over to the west a bit more? I'm sorry, the other direction. Yeah. Oh, thank you. How do we feel about Folsom Street? Okay.
So I would second that.
Okay, great. So I have, just to double check, Valmont on the north, Arapahoe on the south, 55th on the east, Folsom on the west.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Carr, aye.
Member Roberts, aye.
Thank you. And next we have SS Walnut Ferries LLC, DBA Walnut Cafe, for a new hotel restaurant type liquor license at 673 South Broadway Street, Boulder, Colorado 80305. And this one did have suggested boundaries, which is from Under the Sun at 627 South Broadway, which is this area. And this is on the north, Dartmouth to Broadway, on the south, city limits, east, Highway 36 to Moorhead, and west was also city.
I would make a motion to approve those boundaries.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Carr, aye.
Great.
Member Roberts, aye. Sorry, my space bar wasn't working.
Oh, no worries. Sorry about that. Perfect. Okay. For liquor license transfer applications, we didn't have any for this month. We do have one brewery or distillery permanent application for distillery. So that is for Zephyr Spirits Inc., DBA Vapor Distillery, application for a permanent Colorado liquor sales room at 1428 Pearl Street, Boulder, Colorado 80302. And this is a state application, and we are just asking for the BL if they have any objections. The applicant is here if you would like to. I can let them in and you can ask them questions if you have anything like that.
I don't think I do. Does any other board member?
No.
Thank you. Your special event permits list is in your packet, and as well as the renewals for this month. We do have a couple of informational items for you. The first one is the BLA retreat agenda is in your packet, and we are moving that to May 1st. Is that right? That's on page 169 of your packet. If you have any feedback for that, if there's anything you want to add or change or anything like that, you can let me know now, or feel free to like send an email or whatever. The next thing is I also sent an email about city council requesting feedback from the boards. There is an opportunity to submit feedback. If anyone would like to, there's a little like memo template that Kristen Changaris had made up. So I believe I sent a link to that to you all where you could edit, and I'm sorry I haven't checked to see if that happened. So if feedback is something that you guys would like to give, let me know. It's not required. Whatever works for you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last thing here is that the June 19th meeting does fall on a city holiday. So we just wanted to get your feedback on if you would like to reschedule that, what the board would like to do for that day, Wednesday, June 19th.
I would like to reschedule that because that is also a holiday for me.
Yep, same for me.
I'm
can
good the week before or the week after.
I was gonna say the same thing. Yeah.
I would prefer the week after. Sorry, I'm particular.
So that would be June 26th would be 1 week from that day.
That would be great.
Okay, great. And I believe that is everything that we have for matters from licensing clerk. So last is matters from chair and members of the authority. If you all have anything.
I just have, woof, what a hearing. It's been quite a while. You can see I'm rusty. And Mr. Ramirez, thank you so much for working with me on remembering the procedures.
Oh, you did really great, Chair Calfano.
Thank
You did
you.
great.
It was, we haven't had a show cause, and yeah, thank God it wasn't someone contesting the charges again, because those are always rough. And thank you, Officer Recht. I appreciate your looking out for the community and really doing your civic service.
Yeah, really appreciative.
And again, thank you so much to Kristen, Mr. Ramirez, and Officer Recht again for your due diligence in this matter. It's very concerning. And I am going to be the most hated old man that lives on the hill.
But we appreciate you.
Thank you. All right. Is there anything else from the board?
Do we know, did we get any new board members?
Thank
Did
you
we
so
talk about
much.
that?
I'm so sorry. I forgot to talk about that. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Oh, I was like, did I?
Yes, that's very important. Okay, so for board recruitment, as you know, there was one applicant that ended up interviewing for the BLA, and city council chose not to appoint that person. And so board recruitment is actually open again. And it is open until April 19th, so a month. So if you know anyone, encourage them to apply. And we are doing some extra recruitment around trying to get some qualified candidates in here. So yes, thank you so much for reminding. That's the update on that. And then member Absalom did have to leave early, but member Absalom can continue in his seat until it is filled. Or he can reapply.
Just for future reference, will he be able to vote on minutes since he left early?
I will I'll let Roberto answer that one.
He will be because no matters were decided subsequent to him leaving, other than setting up another meeting,
Perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
of course.
And with that, Member Califano would make a motion to adjourn.
Member Carr will second that motion.
All in favor, say aye. Member Califano, aye.
Member Carr, aye.
Member Roberts, aye.
And we are adjourned at 5:26 p.m.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.
Thank you, everyone.